Hi everyone, welcome to the Rhythm Section Future Proof Masterclass number 4. If you're not kind of already familiar, Future Proof evolved from Rhythm Section's Patreon program that we ran during lockdown, and the idea was to kind of demystify the music industry, level the playing field, kind of make available knowledge and information that's sometimes not available, and it should be. And we're now, with Future Proof, able to make that information available for free to a wider audience, because obviously with Patreon you have to pay. So it's really exciting that we'll be able to bring you sessions like this today. If you didn't catch any of the previous ones, the previous streams are on our YouTube channel, so go and check those out if you're interested. And that means that we are today broadcasting from Avalon Cafe in Bermondsey, sunny Bermondsey in southeast London, and means that I can share a big welcome to everyone watching at home and also to those of you that are here in the room. I'm Emily. I am one of the 2 people running the Future Proof programme, along with Henry and Bradley and Amelia and the rest of the Rhythm Section team. I'm a DJ and a producer and a percussionist, using the name Echo Juliet. But I am not the important person in this conversation. I'm very delighted to be introduced to you, Ruf Dug, incredible DJ, producer, Rhythm Section artist and friend of the label, who's going to share lots of his wisdom with us today, I hope. Feeling wise?
Lots of this, I don't know how much wisdom I have to share, but I will share as much of it as I possibly can. Whether
Excellent.
It's lots or not, I'm not sure. Hello everybody. Good to see everyone.
I'm going to just embarrass you now by sharing something which I found in your bio on the Rhythm Section website, which says that, I think it's probably Bradley who said this, but said, Ruf Dug is the epitome of everything we stand for and an inspiration for all we aim to blossom into. So there you go.
He's got very, very low ambitions, that man. Don't believe a word of it. It's one of the nicest things anyone ever said about me, that.
Yeah.
Bradley, bloody Bradley.
Yeah, but that's why it's so fantastic that you're here doing this session today. So we're going to have a bit of a chat, and then you're going to walk us through one of your tracks, which I'm very excited to see. So you're based in Manchester. You have a studio there.
Yes.
You work from.
Yes.
Can you tell us just a little bit about your setup there and kind of what that's like? Just to give us a picture.
I have a studio. I've had a studio outside of my house now for getting on for 10 years. I was in my spare bedroom for a long time, because you can have a spare bedroom in Manchester. It's a possible thing. But everything was just getting out of control. My neighbour was getting really, really pissed off. We'd brokered like a 9 p.m. Kind of curfew for me to stop making any noise. And then my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, moved in, and then there was no more spare bedroom. And so it was time to start to find a new spot. So I got a space originally in Ancoats, which is a very gentrified part of Manchester now. So I got kicked out of there fairly quickly. And my studio is above a nightclub called Hidden in Manchester, which is just close to the White Hotel in what's increasingly becoming known as the strange quarter of Manchester. We're really close to the prison. It's like one of the very last bits of Manchester. It's kind of like around here, actually. It's like one of the, like here until like that incinerator goes, they're never really going to completely gentrify around here. And in the same way in Manchester, until the prison goes and gets turned into a Malmaison or something, it's never going to change. So that's my studio there. It's got no windows. It used to have a big open flue that I had to bloody seal up because it got cold in the winter. The rent's really cheap. There's loads of weirdos knocking around all the time. But it's above a nightclub, so I can make as much noise whenever I want, because I'll never actually be louder than the sound system. It's cool. It's cool. And I work out of there and have done for a long time now.
Amazing. It's a good tip if you're looking for somewhere for a studio. Look for prisons and incinerators.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, they each come with their own particular charms as well.
Yeah.
But you can work around that.
Yeah. And do you have a lot of gear? Are you someone that owns a lot of synths? You strike me as someone that might.
I mean, there's a lot. I have a lot of stuff in that room. I have a lot of records. I got loads of old TV screens, all kinds of video editing bits. I don't know that like my studio would ever win any kind of awards or would ever feature on one of these sort of Instagrams where you have like amazing studios. My gear list is not going to make too many people salivate. But yeah, I've got a few bits and pieces that suit me well. Enough bits of hardware and a couple of bits that I'm very fond of.
Because I think that's something an assumption I always make with people that have studios. It's like, oh, they must have just piles of synths, and that's why they need a studio, because it's outgrown their house. But it's interesting that in your case, that's not necessarily, you know.
No, well, I mean, my wife's never been to my studio, and it's a good thing, really, because I think if she could actually see inside there and saw what I actually had going on. It's just a place to store everything. We'll talk about, what a studio is actually. This is I want to talk about this later on, like
my next question,
the meaning of a studio, you know. Yeah. Anyway, come on.
Well, yeah, I was going to say to you, so what aside from a space to store all your bits and pieces that your wife doesn't want in the house, what is the studio for you as a space? What's the meaning of that space for you?
Thank you, Emily. I'm glad you asked. This is one of the things I really want to talk about today. I don't know, like the concept of a masterclass. I'm mindful that there's lots of things on the internet that you can learn all kinds of technical tips, and that I myself learn all kinds of technical tips from. So I don't know that necessarily spending 45 minutes discussing what the best attack setting on a compressor for a 909 kick drum would be. 12 milliseconds. But I thought it would be interesting to talk about some of the unspoken, unseen things, the stuff that happens before you even turn the machines on. And one of the places to begin with this is this concept of the studio. And what is the studio? And what is that place? And because the thing is that, I don't know, if this gets now into a question about why do you make music, we're getting super deep super quickly here, but it's an important question. When you're making music and what you're trying to do is you're trying to bring something into existence from scratch. It's magic. It's alchemical. We don't actually know that much scientifically about it. We can study acoustics and we can study harmony and theory, and we can study attack settings on compressors, but we still don't really. Nobody really knows exactly everything about how to make music or what it is, and the fact that even if we're going to confine ourselves just to a keyboard, these 13 tones can keep getting rearranged in a million different ways and still astonishes every day with freshness and newness. It's really bizarre, and so thinking about that and thinking about how we come about making this music and what it is within us that's coming out here, that's causing this magic, leads us to then, well, where am I going with this? What I'm trying to say is that you have to put yourself in a vulnerable state to make really good music. I think this is true. I don't know if anyone else feels this or is aware of this or comes to this conclusion, but you really do. And the studio as a concept is a place where you can be vulnerable, basically. And this is what I'm kind of arriving at. And this is what my studio is to me. And what everyone's studio is, the studio of the mind. It doesn't have to be a physical place. But it's about, there's something sacred about the studio. I don't know, it's in the same way like a temple or a church might be a sacred place, or a dojo, if you're into martial arts, might be a sacred place. So the studio is as well, and there's something that maybe you've not thought about, or maybe is something that you may be aware of but have never really vocalized or verbalized, and that is that concept of how to behave in a studio and what the rules are within there. So when you're in there on your own, it's kind of all right because you're just in your own space. But then the moment you bring someone else into that studio, a collaborator or whoever, and then how you behave with those people, then if that becomes more interesting as well, then, and something that not everyone really perhaps thinks about so much. Does anybody work with other people in a studio? Does anybody collaborate? Or does everybody, who works alone in the studio, by a show of hands? Everyone. Yeah, wow. So is any of this making any sense? Is any of this hitting at all? Like, yeah, okay, cool.
Great.
I could go on for ages here. Do you want to ask me a question to see if we can get into this somewhere? Because I'm just, whoa.
Yeah, that was a big idea straight off the bat. I was going to ask sort of connected to that, like what mindset do you take into the studio with you? How do you, if you're thinking, okay, today I'm going to go and make some music, is there anything you do to prepare yourself for that? Is there anything you think about before you walk through the door, or not walk through a physical door but sit down at a computer?
Well, not anymore, because this is cheesy, man, but it's true. Because my life is now organized and geared in such a way that this is my practice, right? So I'm really lucky. I'm privileged enough to be in a position where I love this. I love what I do, and it's what I do. It's what I do for a living, and I don't have to do anything else. I have to do life things, but I don't have to, I can just do this. And I've worked really hard. I've spent over 20 years now kind of arranging, getting everything in such a way that this is my practice and I can do this now, and I'm completely, learning about myself and learning about my own work practices and things like that. Which is not to say this sounds, I'm not saying like, I am so enlightened now, the music just flows out of me at all times, and it's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that I've got enough awareness of my practice that I can be able to sort of, whatever frame of mind I'm in, if I'm not in a super creative frame of mind, if I'm in an admin frame of mind, I know I've got a load of things that I can do there then. But I'm also able to spot, I guess, when I shift into that more creative state, and I can then dedicate a load of time to it, I don't know if this is the same. I don't have a workflow. Some producers have workflows, and spend their entire life refining this workflow and nailing that workflow and banging out an album a week and just doing all this kind of thing, and it's incredible, and it's just not the way I work at all. I just screw around with things and try not to lose interest in them until they get to a point, and then I can sort of finish them off. There's two different ways. I mean, like the workflow thing always completely baffles me. So yeah, I'm just more about. I think it's much. It's just frames of mind, right? It's just about getting into that state where you can just. I'm back to that vulnerable state again, basically. Back to that moment. It's hard for me to talk about it because I'm going to get up on stage in front of a load of people and talk about being vulnerable. I feel pretty vulnerable now. Does anybody else have imposter syndrome? Ever get it? Just by a show of hands. Yeah. So, yeah, that's all right. That's everybody. Isn't it weird, right? Because isn't it the thing about imposters is only supposed to be one, right? So if we've all got it, then who's the imposter? Only one of us can be the real one. I don't know.
Yeah. Who is the in crowd? Who's
it's like the left? One confident person who goes, oh no, I don't need any of this, mate. Okay, no problem. Dunning-Kruger in the corner.
I think the vulnerability thing is a really interesting thing, because I think it's also something that I've become aware more recently is something that people are drawn to, kind of both it on like social media and people telling stories, and as you were saying, it's kind of a core thing for you in terms of how you think about how you make your music. And it's interesting that probably is subconsciously what comes through when people are listening. And I was going to ask, when you were saying about screw around with ideas until I'm not interested in them anymore, do you ever screw around with ideas to the point where you feel like the essence of the idea is lost? Because that's also a kind of interesting
I mean, I have done in the past, kind of basically like wrung every last element of decency out of a loop, and then just felt awful about it afterwards. I'm a lot less. My emotional investment is kind of weird, right? My emotional investment in the music I make is a lot more reduced these days. I have a lot more distance from it, I guess, and so I'm able to. I'm much more comfortable with throwing things away more now. I've been doing it long enough that I'm aware that whatever it is I'm doing is not running out and not going to stop. When you're first making music, you go, well, this could be it. Fucking hell! Like this could be the last one. Shit! Oh man! Like, and that this feeling is real, right? We've felt this. Yeah, I've felt this a lot, and it's not true, right? It's not true. But at first, you're like, oh man, no, this is the one. This is defo the one, and it's not the one. It's never the one, right? But you don't know this at the time. And now, I'm just like, yeah, delete. Yeah, because it's more fun that way for me, because I'm crazy and scatty like that. So that's my favourite part of the whole process, is the idea bit. Is, yeah, fucking 30 seconds, bang, 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 yeah, I hate it, bang, next one, yes, all right, next one, bang, bang. And then, in this kind of fugue state for like a day, and then come back afterwards and there's 10 different things like saved. I can't remember what any of them are. And to go through and listen to them. That's a different approach to that, you can't have that approach precludes any degree of emotional attachment to anything or any sort of investment of meaning.
Yeah, and I guess that's also what comes with it being a practice, as you
Yeah.
said, like it's repetition.
Yeah.
And you can't keep everything. You're never going to finish every idea, because not every idea is worth finishing. So that's a great way of just
Yeah, and to
smashing
be
through
like
it.
kind of a bit almost. Is it disrespectful or just not giving undue? Oh, we can get into that another time. But not attributing too much value to the ideas, because the next one's coming along.
Yeah. Just circling back to what you were talking about with collaborating earlier, and just interesting to see that no one in their room put their hands up to say that they collaborate with other people. I think it's a really interesting topic, because it can be a really great way for sort of new producers to grow and sort of diversify what they're doing, but it can also have its challenges, I guess. What's been your experience of that as someone who does collaborate quite a lot?
I love it. I really love it. I love, the reason I make music is to connect with people. That's why I do it. It's a language, and I like to communicate, and that's what I'm doing. And so to do that with another person right at the beginning, or people, is I love it. I really like it, especially when you find someone that you're able to collaborate with well. Because what's lovely is, and like these days, you don't have to be in the same space as that person. So what's, one of my favorite things is to send a beat off to a vocalist, and then the email to come back, however long later with the vocal track. It's like, right, what's happened to it now? Like, what? It's so exciting, like, because someone's taken something that you've made, and then they're putting their thing on it, and it's a real buzz. For me, it's a buzz anyway, and I don't know, like, I've got a formal music training. I was lucky enough to go to a pretty good school, and I learned a lot of music from a very early age. And so I was in choirs and I was in orchestras all the way through school. And there's something about singing in a choir that is just incredible. Sung all the different voices, started off as a little treble and made my way down to bass. But like when you're singing in a choir, in a harmony, and because you are the instrument, then there's no, that's it. You're fucking locked in, and all these other voices around you. There's something. That's a core memory for me. That's a real foundation thing. I'm 11 years old again now when I'm talking about this. So there's something about two people or more than one person vibing, musically connected. That transcends fucking all of this. It's that just that moment when that happens, just these two little glowing entities just like vibrating together. That's cosmic. That's absolutely cosmic that that's happening. And then maybe you make a nice tune as well, but
Not just me.
but it's that bit defo.
Yeah, but it sounds like then, from what you said, that came quite naturally to you, as someone who'd been collaborating with other musicians sort of throughout your, the time you were growing up. So did you, from the point you started producing, was it an immediate instinct to go and find other people to work with, or did you have to kind of push yourself outside of
No, it came immediately, because when I started producing, I was living in Australia, kicking around with a real cool bunch of pals. We were all sort of DJing together, we were all learning to produce together. And we all just came up, and so we'd all be, each of us, like, I had one little rat mouth mono synth, and my mate had a mini moog, and another mate had a delay pedal. So it was like, right, let's all get them together in the room and get baked and make beats for 6 hours, And so there was always that sort of jamming. It's like being in a band when you're a kid or whatever. Just, yeah, same thing. So that's always been there for me. even though I still spend the majority of my time on my own.
Yeah, amazing. So what advice would you give then for anyone in the room that wants to try and find someone to collaborate with or kind of give that a go?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's plenty of people here who have never collaborated with anyone before. You don't even need like an app. You just like turn to your left or your right and ask someone. But I mean, I think the thing is, right, is that it's we're back to that vulnerability again. It becomes, there's an order of magnitude once you get another person in the room, because it's complicated. Because maybe you want to show off a bit, or maybe you're a bit nervous, or maybe you're a bit jealous, or and maybe they are as well. Maybe there's all that shit going on before you've even turned the machines on, and maybe, you know, what do you do? So I mean, going back to the concept of the studio again is about, that's how vital that concept is. You know, it's you know, it's a safe space, basically, and it's about creating an environment in which it's okay to be all of those things. What happens, right? What happens if you've got a vocalist and you're recording their take, and it's just, you know, it's some vocals they've written themselves, something deeply, deeply personal, and they've just poured out, you know, the take of their life. And, you know, they're on the verge of, like, just falling apart emotionally completely. And, you know, the delivery was a bit flat. Like, how do you deal with that? What do you do then? I mean, I've never had to do that. So, you know, auto-tune, that's what you do. But, like, I mean, but that's a hypothetical to sort of bring us back to that concept of the studio and why it's important. And then it follows that if you're going to treat other people with that degree of respect, well, you know, there's a situation where, you know, that's a UN diplomacy level situation, you know, like, whoa. But then it kind of follows that if you're going to treat other people that way, then you have to treat yourself that way as well. And I think one of the biggest problems when you're first starting out is that you never really treat yourself with very much respect. I never did. It's too easy to hate your own work, or, you know, beat yourself up for not being good enough yet, or to, you know, shit, why am I just so, you know, it's really hard, all that stuff, you know, all that shit you got to get through, especially when you're starting out. And you know, so take that concept of the studio and apply it to yourself first, please.
I think that's amazing advice. And I think also, as well as what's going on in your own head, there are all the outside influences of, you know, other people in the industry, labels, other people's opinions, which, you know, we'll get onto a bit later, I think, talking about feedback and stuff. But, like, as well as the internal battle, there's all these external factors too, aren't there, which sometimes don't help.
Yeah, so, you know, here we are. We're talking a practice that requires you to be, or, you know, it's helpful if you are in a completely a very vulnerable state. You have to be sympathetic to other people, and you have to be respectful, and you have to be open and honest and completely thing. And then you've got the fucking music industry right here in a big steamroller, ready to drive over all your dreams. Backwards, forwards, backwards, forwards. This is progress. Backwards, forwards. That's all it is. And so you've like, yeah. So you've got on one hand like this beautiful cosmic union, and then on the other hand, one of the most brutal, exploitative kind of machines that we'll ever come up against. It's complicated. And then you've got social media.
Yeah. the new joy that's been added.
You know,
yeah.
It's really complicated. Like, you know, the whole mental health thing is totally real. The struggle is no, you know, and musicians, come on, like, none of it, like, is anyone here by choice? I mean, we're all here because we can't help ourselves. Can anyone stop? Because if you can stop, then it's easy. You just stop and go and get a real job, and then it's all fucking forgotten. But we can't. So it's really, really complicated. Super complicated.
Yeah, that's a whole other talk right there.
Yeah,
really?
of course.
Yeah, definitely.
But so you come back to your practice, right? This is how you get around it, right? So you come back to your practice, find out what your practice is, be honest, be real, just keep doing that, fuck everything else. And then, you know, There are ways out then. There are ways out. Don't aim too high. Don't aim too high. I mean, you're in London, so yeah. But don't aim too high. Just don't. There's no need.
Yes, that's good piece of advice. On the theme of collaboration, the project that you're going to talk us through now is a collaborative one, isn't it? It's a rhythm section release, which is very topical. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about what it is?
Yes. So how long ago? 2000. Larry was born 2017, 2018, something like that. Rhythm section. They were moved into the first premises, not far from here. And they built a studio. I've known Bradley now for nearly 10 years. I did a boiler room at his house, and we became pals very quickly after that. It was a really interesting time. The club night had been going for a little bit. The label hadn't started yet. And yeah, we just became firm friends and have been ever since. So when they finally were going to open a physical studio, it's like, yeah, it's going to be great. We're going to open a studio. We're going to get the label artists in. We're going to be able to do all these things. I was like, well, I'll come down there and make a record, or let me come and spend 2 weeks there and make a record. And it was amazing. I came down and it was beautiful. We just got on the phone and worked and just invited anybody who we knew down to come down for sessions. And it was just me and Marley in the studio for 2 weeks working on beats and things, and people were coming through. It was just really lovely. It was a really nice time. And out of the back of it came 5 tracks, which became the release called The Committee. And so this is one of them. This is the track with Watson down to it. I'll play the track first so you can all hear it. This is the... Yeah. Should have played the radio edit.
If you're selling, I'm buying. You're the pilot, I'm flying.
So I'd had in my mind, I'd sort of, before I came to London, when I was like in my head, I sort of wanted to pay homage to that early 90s period of UK soul dance music. Street soul, early house music, London, Manchester sound system music that was being made that wasn't kind of from the reggae sort of canon. And so one of the tracks I wanted to make was a slow house track, about 110. That was all I had in my mind. So I was in the rhythm section studio, which is a lovely studio, has got a very jazzy gear list, would look good on Instagram. And I was just knocking around. I can't remember how early in I was made. This was like a couple of days into the session. I was there for 2 weeks altogether, and this is a day or two in. And yeah. And this is just a little sketch. I mean, the tempo's there. I quite like it. I've not heard this for years. This version. But at this point, I don't think there's anything recognisable. The bass line a little bit. And so this is how I tend to work. Does everybody use Ableton? Does anybody not use Ableton? Stick your hand up. Logic. All right, okay. So this is the big difference between Ableton and Logic, is this screen here. You know, you can just screw around with loops, no timeline, and you just got your different clips. They can all be same lengths. This is how I always start here. I often never leave here, you know, like to get onto the other side, it means things are really cooking. But yeah, I've got I'd say 80% of my projects never get off this screw around page yet. Got them all saved. So you know, that's it. Simple, just micking around. And then the next day, Watson off of FYI Chris came through the studio, and I was like, let's have a bit of a jam. And we were kind of tweaking things a bit. And I said to Watson, have you got any vocals? And he reached in his phone and he pulled out his text edit, and he had a few bars. So now, this is where I got with Watson. Bit sort of Charles Webster vibe. But there's this. Where is it? Yeah, all right. And then this with this. And then we just track loads of Watson. What's he doing here now? Let's get down to it. Let's get down to it. Hey. Let's get down to it. Let's get down.
What are the lyrics?
I'm buying. You're a pilot.
Oh man. Anyway, but
So let's get down to it. 'Cause I'm into you. If you're selling.
But at this point, I got stuck. I got all these little bits of his. I got this sort of groove, but I couldn't. It just wasn't.
So let's get down to it.
I'm just not feeling this beat. I just still don't feel it now. 8 years. I mean, you know what? I quite like a little bit of it. I like the chords because I've not heard the chords for ages. It's just a bit too smooth. So I parked it and just moved on to a whole bunch of other things. And then back in Manchester, back in Hidden in the little studio, I got back into it again. MV for Manchester version. Don't save.
I'd love to ask you about your file naming system.
Yeah, well, you know, like version, last one, final, point two, fuck. Yes, I mean it this time. Brackets, new version. File naming system. But what I do so now, so here's just, I mean, like, you've got to, like, when you finally start getting to the point where you're sending music to people and things like this, having had to pay for something for a record to be, for a lacquer to be recut because they sent the wrong version off because my naming was wrong, it is always good just to put, like, demo in very big capital letters at the end of anything that you don't want to get released, and then pre-master into something that you are actually sending off. Just a big, big name. But before then, whatever you like. So what I did was I sort of came back and I've got this project full of all these little bits, and now it's just got massive now. There's all kinds of bits going on. So Watson's there. I slung Watson through an auto tuner and a harmonizer. Should we just see what that sounds like first?
Maybe we can spend the night alone.
So this is just, here we go, turn off the tune, turn off the...
I'm wishing you were here instead of on the phone.
Not bad.
Maybe we can spend the night
And then
alone.
I just kind of got rid of nearly everything and made the beat again. So I rebuilt the beat, I made it a bit more interesting. I sort of was like, well, let's look at old school house. So let's instead of get away from that. So we just needed more of that fucking raw sound. So 707. I've just got a big sample pack with all the drum machine samples in it. I don't screw around with, like, machines or anything. So there's the beat. The ARP stayed. Still just a loop at this point. And then I was having a mare with the bass line. Yeah, nah. No way. Nah, not into that. Too smooth again, try to be isolated. So I was kind of there. It's nearly there now. It's nearly there. There's sort of, but it needs a fucking bass line. So then I went through the record collection. I went through listening to music that was inspiring me. Like, so went back to the very record, Jealousy and Lies by Julian Jonah, that started this all off. 707. Good rhythm for a bass line, that. And that was it. I was like, right, that's the rhythm from a bass line, because that was what I was needing. It wasn't a harmonic thing, because there's, fucking bass line, like 5 different notes that you really use. It was the pattern. How was the pattern going to sit in the pocket and still sound OG? So I just nicked it. And then the moment you get that rhythm, there we go. 600,000 plays on Spotify. And that's it. Thank you, Julian Jonah. I mean, that was literally it. And so, a sample pack downloaded off fucking Pirate Bay. The bass line replaced with a £15 Yamaha tone generating synthesizer that you can get off eBay. And that's kind of it, And then Watson's mega vocal. And so we got an arrangement. Finally, past the 80% point.
If you're selling, I'm buying.
So this is the arrangement now, but then, so I took this then back to London, to the Rhythm Section studio, to mix it.
While it's opening, how many of the synths from the Rhythm Section studio are left in this track then?
2. So
Two.
There's the
Juno.
the ARP, and then the Juno. Yeah. Doesn't have an external. It's supposed to have a reverb as well, but we don't have an external one there. It's not there.
If you're selling, I'm buying. You're the pilot, I'm flying.
Oh yeah, we put loads of sexy breathing in it. I forgot all about this. Check this out. Well, we need to make this really sleazy, Watson. We've got to get back and do some heavy breathing for me. This was an overdub.
I'm buying.
Forgotten all about that channel. So yeah, that's original, and that's original. They're the only bits from and Watson. They're the only original bits from the session, and there we go.
Amazing.
Not bad, hey.
Thanks very much. No, that's incredible. It's really interesting to see the evolution of it. Actually, I wasn't expecting that, but it's really brilliant to see all those failed attempts at things, actually. So thank you for sharing those.
Yeah, I mean, failed attempts is one way of saying it. I mean, it's just a scenic route, perhaps, is another way. This was always. Was this? Well, there's the question. It's a good question, though. It is a good question in the life. Was this always hiding, and was it waiting to be uncovered, or did it have to be ground out, or is it a completely different thing? It's. I don't know. It depends on how you look at it.
Yeah.
Normally, I don't have this kind of patience for a tune, though. Normally, this ends in the bin. Watson's amazing vocal is what kept me alive. Is what kept it alive. If it hadn't been for him, then this would never have been made. I mean, obviously, but it would, yeah.
Would have ended up in the bin.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good example of why collaboration can be really valuable, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Someone else had put their time and energy in, and you felt like you wanted to repay that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much for digging into that. It's interesting that you mentioned along the way a sample pack that you got off Pirate Bay. One of the reasons why we thought it'd be great timing to talk to you today is that Rhythm Section has just released a sample pack with Loop Masters called Anthology, which you contributed to, which is fantastic. I thought it would just be interesting to touch on that really briefly, because I think it's something that as a new producer or emerging producer, you might not imagine that you would ever do. So I'm interested to know kind of what your approach was when you got that brief. Where did you start?
Well, I have a pretty good sample library. you know, I think anybody who's been producing for a decent amount of time will have a folder with a bunch of samples in it, and that folder, those samples will come from a variety of different places, you know, and you know, you only have to chop a sample up once and then save it, and then it's in your library forever, and you know, you do that often enough, you end up with a nice big library. My library's sort of a mixture of a bunch of different things. Can everyone, it's just up here, this is my sample library. It's quite large. It's not actually quite large. It's I don't know why I'm wobbling my sample library around like that. It's all right. It's good size. Sample library envy, anyone? Right. Okay. So I mean, like, there's all kinds of stuff. I've got bits of the weather in here. Like, I don't. Oh no, that's not the weather. That's a weather report tune that I've chopped up. That's what that is. There we are. Bit of a I think some of these might have ended up in the sample. I did not put any weather report samples in the sample pack. There's all kinds of stuff. Got a load of video game music samples. Skyrim, fucking Skyrim. I don't know what I've got here. Traffic. It's always good to have a bit of traffic. You know? That's a drum kit. So this is a nice one. This is, I mean, there's quite a bit of this in the rhythm section library, actually, from the TARDIS drum kit. A while ago, it was when I was in Sydney. I'm just going to leave the traffic going. It's quite nice, isn't it?
Atmospheric.
And we knew someone who had a really amazing analog studio in Sydney, and so me and a pal who's a drummer went down and used it. An amazing drum kit, mic'd up with about 50 grams worth of microphones, going through a U-Butte Neve desk onto a 24-track Ampex. And so we recorded ages and loads of drums, and so all of these drums are cut from that. And they say, like, this is like it's a 400 grand kick drum sample that probably cost you if you wanted to recreate these. It's just a really beautiful, just a really gorgeous analog kit. There's always something from it in every production I use. So, you know, just over the years, you just kind of build up a little selection. What else have we got in here now? Size cuts. What have we got in here? India. Don't know where this is from. You just chop bits up. So when the time came, you need a sample pack. It's an absolute doddle because I've got all of this. So I just went through the folder, picked a few things, a couple of drum kits, a couple of bits and bobs, and then I think I also, because it was during lockdown we were making it, and it's like, just gone. All right. And I'm in the dark.
I can still see you.
Really close to this. And so I had my D50, which is like a Roland synth. I brought that home with me during lockdown, and so I just sampled a load of like sounds off that and patterns and things, and that was it really. Different people have different, but I know Contours for him, he just like, because he's just got just this incredible collection of natural percussions. Yeah. And so he just recorded the hell out of that. Yeah. I think it's really diverse set of sounds, isn't it?
Yes, overall, of course. Which is amazing. We mentioned at the beginning that we were going to kind of come back to getting feedback from people in the industry. And for the people in the room, we're going to be doing a listening session later on where we're going to be doing some giving and receiving of feedback, which can be a really sticky thing sometimes, can be a bit bruising perhaps. What's one of the worst pieces of feedback you've had that you're happy to share?
I remember, so at the same time I was making the committee, I was also working on some stuff for another record label as well. And the head of that label had come over to the studio, had come over to the UK, and we were working on this music together. But while I was working on it with him, and at the same time I'd finished the committee project. And I don't know if the masters were back, but you know, it was pretty finished. And I just played him the 5 tracks. And he just sort of listened to him and didn't say anything. And at the end he just went, I think it's boring.
Oh, ouch.
This is like halfway through, like while we're working together as well. Like, you know, just lays that one on me. I And it wasn't actually the worst bit of feedback because I actually understand what he means. I don't know if I had been brand new in the game and had that piece of feedback. I don't know. I give him the benefit of the doubt, knowing that he knew me well enough to know that I would be able to take that particular piece of criticism, and also to understand what he meant, because I do understand what he meant, and I don't. We still talk to each other. But I always bring it up as a piece as an example because it's pretty brutal. I promise not to. I'm not going to call anyone's music boring tonight. Defo.
Good.
I mean, I don't expect it will be. But yeah, I mean, it's a tricky situation to be in, because to offer, especially with music, right? Like within different practices, within art, there are critical frameworks. Within literature, there are critical frameworks. There are actual models that you can apply, like cold, unfeeling sets of rules that you can apply to the work to derive some sort of, a critical approach to it. That doesn't really exist in music. You can apply. What can you do? You can talk about. There are a few sort of classical rules. You're not supposed to have consecutive fifths and fucking all that kind of nonsense. But that really means anything anyway. So then, feedback, like those of you who've brought pieces of music for us to listen to talk about today, like what is it that you're actually searching for? Are you? I'm not. I'm just curious about this. I tend not to search for feedback. I tend not to ask for feedback. I remember something Derek May said once. I went at the Red Bull Academy. He said the moment you ask someone what they think of it, then you've lost the battle. I think I'm paraphrasing, but I kind of get what he says there. Which is a great bit of thing to say to all of you just brought music, asking what people are going to think of it. I don't necessarily agree with him. I don't necessarily agree with those choice of words, but I kind of get what he's saying. He's talking about things. He's not talking about a formal feedback session like this, where we're actively seeking open criticism. He's talking more about like just when you're generally making your music, and about that kind of mindset where you are making this music to try and impress people, or you're worried, or you don't know what to think about it yourself, and all this, So it's a tricky world. People will often, I get sent a lot of music, especially because of the NTS show now. I get sent a lot of music. People will often send me music and ask me what I think about it, and I will very rarely ever really reply, because what do people really want? What do people want? Do they want to hear, it's amazing, we'll sign it, I'm going to put it out, it's fucking, you're a genius, that's amazing? Or do they want to hear like, you know what, like around about 600 hertz, probably take that down by 2.3 dB or something like that? Or do they want something else, and then what's the role? Like,
Yeah, it depends on the context sometimes as well, doesn't
How
it?
good is everyone at taking feedback? How good is everyone at taking compliments? Does everybody say thank you every time someone pays you a compliment, or do you try and talk them out of it?
And then look at the floor.
Do you know what you do, right? Is all you do, whether you mean it or not, is you just look them squarely in the eyes and you say, thank you. That's all you have to do. And then sooner or later, once you fake it, you'll actually start feeling the gratitude that comes from saying thank you. And then it'll actually start meaning something. And those compliments will start feeling nice. But don't believe them ever.
It's a fine
it's
line.
all lies. Yeah.
Amazing. I think it's probably about time for us to wrap it up, and that seems
Cool.
like a great note to end.
Yeah.
It's all lies.
It's all lies.
No, thank you so much, Ruf Dug, for such fantastic insights.
pleasure,
and
Emily. Thank
on
you.
a massively wide range of topics as well. And I should also say thank you to Arts Council England and PRS Foundation, who've made this possible, and our partners Ableton, Pirate Studios and Audio Technica for the sound tonight as well. So yeah, thank you so much for that.
My pleasure.
And thank you all for watching and joining us.